John, what is the format of this video? Is it a documentary? It's very long, almost 3 hours with very little drama.
Well, actually, it's a research report, and the idea is to make it a fair description of what the experience of becoming a teacher was like for these teacher candidates. So in many ways, it's not about entertainment, and it's certainly not a drama, because in the video, everything's shown in context. Nothing's actually pulled out of its context. So what you hear are mainly the full comments by the participants so that we can hear their voice, and that's what makes it very long. Also, because it was a research report, it had to abide by the ethics application, and so that meant the participants had to be protected, and so the participants completed the consent forms, and they also signed personal release forms, and we only used the names that they chose to share.
Is this why you don't mention the names of the participants and the school?
Yes, exactly. Unlike a written report or an article, a video exposes the identities of participants, so we used a number of features to disguise their identities. For example, we never used the full names of research participants. The university that was in the study is not necessarily the one that is depicted in the video. Some events were staged to show what really happened without exposing identifying details. Some people's identities were described by function alone. And participants had the choice to use alternate names, and some took advantage of that. Those who know the individuals involved will be able to guess the location, but this report should be seen in the light of the commonalities of teacher education programs. They all have classes. They all send their teacher candidates out to regular schools.
Why did you make this video instead of doing a standard research project?
Well, most research is done in written form, and it's intended for scholars of whatever discipline. In this case, it would be education. But this project was done to make the research accessible through the use of technologies which the ordinary citizen can come to their own understanding about. So new technologies bring so much more information to society, and we in the academy need to make it so that everyone who chooses to use it can. I wanted to make it accessible to students who might in the future want to take teacher education.
Why is the research important, and why was it important to do?
Well, most of my students come to their program not knowing what they will learn and do, or after hearing from teachers and former students what their impressions were, both of which are very individual. But watching this report, potential students can come to their own conclusions about what features are important to them in choosing their teacher education program, and it can give them some information so that they can ask hard questions before accepting a spot in any one of those programs. I also think it's important to show how new technologies can be used to conduct rigorous research. It's also important to disrupt the attitude that this is the way we've always done research. In the past, we did our research, we went to our offices, and we wrote articles for other professors. Now we can bring our research to the public in ways that they can understand and get some value out of. And so I think it's vital to incorporate new technologies in appropriate ways.
Who do you think it will help?
Well, I hope it will help prospective students, those who plan teacher education programs as well, so that they can see the reactions of teacher candidates to different components of their programs. I think it'll help current teachers who can look back at their own teacher education and see what it is like now. And finally, I hope it's of interest to anyone who wonders about how teachers do get their education and become teachers.
Since this is a research report, what are your conclusions?
Well, first off, this is what I would call a wide but not a deep study, because there have been tens or even hundreds of thousands of studies about teacher education. What this does is it follows the surface, but it doesn't really delve into the depths of the teacher candidate experience. It's the first purely video-based study, so the conclusions, I expect, will be quite similar to many studies that have already been conducted, only this one's in video. The first conclusion, from my point of view, is that the teacher education that these teacher candidates followed was like most professional programs in that it was a journey of socialization into a profession and the way it thinks and talks. The teacher candidates started out thinking as students, and they ended up mostly thinking as teachers. You can compare the first focus group before the teacher candidates go out to schools and when they first come back. The first time they talk about classes and professors, and they're not really very critical. After they come back, they're talking about their experiences. They now have a framework to think about their teacher education program. You can see that their concerns change, even though there's a lot of individual variation. However, one thing that you can see is that there is an increase in critical analysis of the teacher education program itself. The only time that this socialization process appears to reverse itself is due to the exam at the end of the first term. The teacher candidates seem like they're almost forced back into thinking as students in order to study for the exam. So in the January focus group, they appear to complain as if they're students again. However, their complaints are grounded in more pedagogical knowledge, and their critiques are actually quite good. In fact, if you remember, they take apart one of the questions on the exam. Two students, Catherine and Laura, defend the process, and they defend it actually really well, while Larry makes some devastating points. The one difference is that the new emphasis on getting teaching jobs forces them to continue the process of becoming a teacher. They'll play the game that they think they are playing with their courses, but they will play it with more strategic thought. A fourth point is that teacher candidates' second practicum seems far different than their first, and they start to look and sound much more like teachers. At the same time, we see the development of collegiality as the video moves on. Near the end of the program, they talk about each other with clarity, and they can say why they think a colleague will make a good teacher. And I think that knowledge is really important part of the process of becoming a teacher, because now they know what good teaching is.
You mentioned that this is disruptive. In what ways is it disruptive? And what exactly does it disrupt?
Well, it gives anyone who's interested a chance to see the data in a real research study, and that takes power away from the gatekeepers of the academic world. And I think it's important because the world is changing, and those who run the academy need to catch up and realize that the research that is done has to be squarely in the public interest, and not in the interest of a few, whether they be professors or universities or corporations or politicians. So this is a first attempt, and it's probably a pretty clumsy one, to democratize research using new technologies by distributing the results outside the normal academic and governmental power structure. No peer-reviewed journal editors and reviewers will decide if it's worthy. The world public will decide if it is useful by watching it or by not watching it. After all, the citizens of countries pay for research to be done. They should be able to see the results they paid for in ways that they can make sense.